I'm Elena Ramirez. I'm 30 years old. And last Friday night, I walked into my own birthday party only to discover it wasn't a celebration at all. It was a trial. 72 relatives sat in a private dining room staring at me like I was a stranger who had wandered into the wrong building. My father stood at the head of the table holding a folder filled with DNA test results. My mother snatched my purse from my shoulder like it was evidence in a courtroom. And my younger brother was recording the entire thing on his phone. My father cleared his throat, tapped the microphone, and said the words that shattered my entire life. "You're not our daughter, Elena. And we expect to be repaid for everything we spent raising you." 72 people watched. Not one person defended me. But someone else was watching too. A man standing quietly in the back corner of the room near the exit. A man my parents had spent my entire life insisting was dead. My biological father. And he hadn't come empty-handed. Before I continue, if you enjoy powerful real lifestyle stories like this, take a moment to subscribe to Women Reddit Stories. These stories dive deep into shocking family betrayals, unexpected twists, and the moments that change people's lives forever. And if you're watching right now, leave a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. Now let me take you back 3 weeks before the night my entire life fell apart. I was sitting in the staff lounge at St. Michael's Hospital in Chicago, halfway through a night shift, when my phone started buzzing across the table. The screen lit up with my brother Mateo's name. Mateo never called unless he needed something. Money. A ride. Or someone to listen while he complained about whatever influencer drama he was currently tangled up in. I picked up the phone and answered quietly. "Hey, what's up?" "Elena." Mateo's voice exploded through the speaker. "Okay, you cannot freak out, but I just found out something huge." I rubbed my eyes, already exhausted from the 12-hour shift. "What is it?" "Mom and Dad are throwing you a surprise birthday party." I blinked. "A what?" "For your 30th birthday," he said excitedly. "They're inviting everyone. Literally everyone. Tia Carmen, Uncle Luis, the cousins from Phoenix, even Abuela's sister from San Diego." I stared at the vending machine across the room like it had suddenly started speaking Spanish. "A party, for me?" "Yeah," Mateo said. "A big one." My parents had never thrown me a birthday party. Not once. When I graduated from nursing school at the top of my class, my parents gave me a hug and a card with $20 inside. But when Mateo turned 21, they rented out an entire rooftop bar downtown. 200 guests. A DJ. Professional photographers. My parents gave a speech about how proud they were of their son. My graduation dinner had been leftover enchiladas at the kitchen table. "Are you sure?" I asked slowly. "Mom and Dad don't usually do stuff like that for me." "I know," Mateo said. "That's what makes it such a big deal." He lowered his voice. "You have to act surprised, though. Mom said nobody was supposed to tell you." "I'll act surprised." After we hung up, I sat there for a long time staring at my coffee. Maybe things were finally changing. Maybe after 30 years my parents had started seeing me the way they saw Mateo. The dependable one. The responsible one. The one who never caused problems. For the last 8 years, I'd worked as an emergency room nurse. 8 years of overnight shifts. 8 years of holding strangers' hands while doctors told families there was nothing more they could do. And every single month during those 8 years, I had sent my parents money. $400. Sometimes more if they said things were tight. I never kept track. But one night out of curiosity I did the math. $43,000. Money I never asked to be repaid. Because that's what family does. Meanwhile Mateo still lived in my parents' house rent-free while he chased social media fame. 2 months ago he convinced Dad to give him $10,000 to start a content production company. My parents wrote the check without asking a single question. 3 years earlier, when my car broke down, I asked Dad if he could help me with $1,500 for a down payment on a used Toyota. He stared at me like I'd insulted him. "You're independent, Elena. You can figure it out." So I figured it out. I took a loan. Picked up extra shifts. Paid it off myself. My mother always said the same thing whenever Matteo asked for money. "He's still finding himself." Apparently I had found myself too early. 3 days before the party, something else happened. I received an email from the hospital administration. I had been selected as a finalist for the ER shift supervisor position. The promotion came with a major salary increase. But it also required a professional recommendation letter. Preferably from someone influential. My supervisor suggested one person immediately. "Your father used to serve on the hospital foundation board, right?" Luis Ramirez. My father. A respected businessman in the Chicago community. A recommendation from him would carry serious weight. So I called him that night. "Dad, do you think you could write a recommendation letter for me?" There was a pause. Then something unexpected happened. He sounded pleased. "Of course, Elena." I almost dropped the phone. "I'll give it to you at your birthday party," he added. "Make it a special moment." Something about his tone felt rehearsed. But I pushed that thought away. Maybe he really was proud of me. Maybe things were finally different. I bought a new dress for the party. Dark emerald green. Elegant but simple. I wanted to look professional. Successful. Like someone worth celebrating. What I didn't realize was that I wasn't dressing for a birthday party. I was dressing for my own public humiliation. The night of the party arrived cold and windy. Chicago in late October had a way of making everything feel sharper. I stood in front of my bathroom mirror adjusting my earrings, trying to calm the strange nervous feeling sitting in my stomach. Tonight was supposed to be special. 30 years old. A surprise party. A recommendation letter from my father. For the first time in years, I felt like maybe my family was proud of me. Maybe I finally mattered. I grabbed my coat and headed outside. As I stepped into the parking lot of my apartment building, I saw Matteo sitting inside his car. His phone was pointed directly at my vehicle. Recording. When he noticed me watching, he quickly lowered the phone and grinned. "Just testing my camera," he said casually. A strange chill ran down my spine. But I ignored it. I had spent my entire life ignoring warning signs when it came to my family. 30 minutes later I arrived at the Lakeview Ballroom, a luxury event space overlooking Lake Michigan. Through the tall glass windows I could see dozens of people moving around inside. My parents had rented the entire venue. I sat in my car for a moment practicing my surprised reaction. "Oh wow, you shouldn't have." It felt silly, but I wanted the moment to be perfect. I walked inside. The hostess smiled politely. "Ramirez party?" "Yes." "Right through those doors." I pushed them open. And 72 people turned to stare at me. No decorations. No balloons. No music. Just rows of chairs facing a long table at the front of the room. My parents were standing behind it. My father was holding a red folder. And suddenly I realized something was very wrong. He picked up the microphone. "Elena," he said coldly. "Please sit down." My legs moved automatically. I sat in the single chair positioned in the center of the room. Facing everyone. Like a defendant in court. That's when I noticed the camera crew standing near the wall. Not photographers. Videographers. They were filming everything. My heart started pounding. "Dad, what is this?" He opened the red folder slowly. "Elena Ramirez," he said into the microphone. "Do you know why 72 people are here tonight?" "My birthday?" I whispered. "No." His voice echoed through the silent room. They're here as witnesses. He lifted a sheet of paper into the air. A DNA test. And suddenly my entire world began to collapse. A DNA test. The words echoed through the silent ballroom like a gunshot. For a moment I thought I had misunderstood him. Dad, what are you talking about? My father held the document high enough for the first few rows of relatives to see. His expression was calm. Almost rehearsed. 3 months ago, he said into the microphone, your mother and I submitted samples to a private genetic testing laboratory. The room was so quiet I could hear someone shifting in their chair. The results came back conclusive. He paused. You are not our biological daughter. Gasps rippled across the room. Someone whispered, I knew it. Another voice murmured, something always felt off. My ears rang like someone had slammed cymbals beside my head. That's impossible, I said. My voice sounded distant even to me. My mother stepped forward. You were never ours, Elena. Her voice carried the same cold certainty as my father's. We took you in when nobody else wanted you. The words felt like they were slicing through my chest. We gave you everything, she continued. A home. Food. Education. Opportunities. I looked around the room desperately. Faces I had grown up with. Relatives who had hugged me at Christmas. People who had watched me grow from a quiet child into the adult standing before them now. None of them looked shocked. Most of them looked satisfied. Wait, I said, shaking my head. What are you saying? You adopted me? My father placed the DNA paper back into the red folder. We didn't adopt you. The room seemed to tilt. We agreed to raise you. Agreed? I repeated. Like I was some kind of business transaction. My father reached into the folder again and pulled out another stack of papers. A spreadsheet. Pages filled with numbers. Dates. Totals. For 30 years, he said, your mother and I have supported you. He flipped the pages slowly, like a lawyer presenting evidence. Food. Housing. Clothing. School tuition. Medical bills. He set the stack down on the table. The total cost comes to $522,000. A murmur ran through the crowd. My stomach twisted violently. What does that have to do with anything? My mother stepped forward again. It means, she said sharply, you owe us. The words slammed into me like a physical blow. Owe you? For everything we invested in you. My father slid a document across the table toward me. A contract. I could see the bold words at the top. Promissory agreement. You will sign this tonight, he said calmly. It states that you agree to repay the $500,000 over the next 10 years. My brain struggled to process what he was saying. You're asking me to repay the cost of raising me? You're not our daughter, my mother snapped. We had no legal obligation to keep you. My chest tightened. But you did keep me, I said. Yes, my father replied. And now you'll repay that kindness. Laughter rippled quietly from somewhere near the back of the room. My hands started shaking. This is insane. It's fair, my mother said. Everyone here can confirm that we provided for you your entire life. She gestured to the crowd. 72 witnesses. My father tapped the microphone again. Elena has spent years telling people how poorly we treated her, he said. How unfair we were. I stared at him in disbelief. I never. You complained to coworkers, he interrupted. You told friends that Mateo was favored. His eyes narrowed. You slandered this family. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. She always seemed ungrateful, someone whispered. Another voice added, Luis and Carmen sacrificed so much. My head spun. I had never publicly humiliated my parents. Yes, I had vented to friends sometimes. But who didn't? My father tapped the contract again. You will sign this. And if I don't? His smile was thin. Then I contact your hospital. Ice slid through my veins. You applied for that ER supervisor position recently, didn't you? My stomach dropped. I still have strong connections with the hospital foundation board, he continued smoothly. If I tell them their candidate refuses to honor her obligations to the family that raised her. He shrugged. I imagine that opportunity disappears. The threat hung heavy in the air. My career. Everything I had worked for. Gone with one phone call. My mother suddenly grabbed my purse from the chair beside me and opened it. What are you doing? I demanded. She pulled out my car keys. This vehicle, she said loudly, holding them up, was purchased using income you earned from a job your father helped you obtain. That's not true. You work at a hospital where Luis served on the board for 15 years, she replied smugly. Your success is built on his influence. I paid for that car myself. With a salary you wouldn't have without him. My chest heaved. You're stealing my car. It's collateral, she said. Laughter came from somewhere behind me. Then Mateo's voice spoke close to my ear. Smile, Elena. I turned. He was standing beside my chair holding his phone inches from my face. The screen showed thousands of scrolling comments. He was live streaming. What are you doing? I whispered. Content, he said cheerfully. My followers love family drama. I stared at the screen. Usernames flooded past. Is this real? That poor girl. This family is insane. Someone typed. Her brother is filming this? Mateo grinned. This is blowing up already. Turn it off. No way, he said. We're at like 15,000 viewers. My heart pounded. My humiliation was being broadcast across the internet. Mateo, my mother snapped. Focus the camera. He angled the phone toward the table again. My father pushed the contract closer. Sign it. My hands rested on my knees, trembling. I forced myself to breathe. Slow. Steady. I had spent 8 years in the emergency room watching people panic during the worst moments of their lives. You couldn't panic in those situations. Panic made mistakes. Mistakes killed people. So I did what I always did under pressure. I slowed down. I looked around the room again. 72 relatives. None of them defending me. None of them questioning this insane spectacle. That's when I noticed something strange. A man standing alone near the exit doors. He wasn't sitting with the rest of the crowd. He wasn't filming or whispering. He was just watching. His suit was charcoal gray and perfectly tailored. He looked to be in his early 60s. Silver hair. Sharp jawline. And his eyes were fixed on me. Not with judgment. Not with curiosity. With something else. Something almost like pain. I had never seen him before. Which meant he definitely wasn't family. So why was he here? Next to him stood a younger woman holding a thick manila folder. She kept glancing at her watch. Then whispering something to him. Each time she spoke, he shook his head slowly. Waiting. Watching. Elena. My father's voice snapped my attention back to the table. Are you going to sign the agreement? I ignored him. Instead, I pointed toward the back of the room. Who is that? My father followed my gaze. For just a split second his face changed. The confidence disappeared. Replaced by something I had never seen in him before. Fear. That man, I said. Who is he? My mother quickly stepped in front of my father. No one. Then why is he here? He must have wandered in. My eyes narrowed. This is a private event. My father grabbed the microphone again. Elena, stop trying to change the subject. But I couldn't stop staring at the man. Because something about him felt strangely familiar. Like I had seen his face somewhere before. Sign the document, my father insisted. If you don't, the consequences will be severe. The man in the gray suit finally moved. He took one slow step forward. Then another. The entire room seemed to hold its breath. My father's hands tightened on the microphone. Security, he called out. Remove this man. But the man ignored him. He walked calmly through the crowd until he was standing 10 feet away from the table. Then he spoke. Luis. His voice was deep, controlled, and powerful enough that the entire room fell silent. My father's face went completely pale. The man tilted his head slightly. I think Elena deserves to hear the truth first. The silence that followed felt electric. My mother grabbed my father's arm. Luis, she whispered urgently. But he couldn't look away from the man standing in front of him. And suddenly I realized something terrifying. My parents weren't angry. They were terrified. The man's eyes finally met mine again. And for the first time I noticed something I should have seen immediately. We had the same eyes. Exactly the same shade of deep brown. He took another step forward. My name, he said calmly, is Daniel Whitaker. Then he looked directly at my father. And I believe you owe my daughter an explanation. The room fell into a silence so heavy it felt like the air itself had thickened. 72 relatives sat frozen in their chairs. Mateo's phone was still raised in the air, the live stream chat scrolling so quickly it looked like static. But nobody was paying attention to the comments anymore. Everyone was staring at the man standing in the middle of the ballroom. My father looked like someone had pulled the ground out from under him. His knuckles turned white around the microphone. You shouldn't be here, he said hoarsely. The man in the gray suit didn't react. Instead, he turned his eyes toward me again. And when he spoke, his voice softened in a way that felt almost painfully gentle. Elena. My name sounded strange coming from him. Like he had practiced saying it many times but never out loud. I'm sorry you had to find out like this. My heart pounded. What are you talking about? My father slammed the microphone down onto the table. Security, he shouted again. But nobody moved. The hotel staff standing near the entrance looked confused. The guests looked glued to their seats. And Mateo's phone kept recording everything. The man took another step forward. My name is Daniel Whitaker, he repeated calmly. Then he looked directly at my father. And Elena is my daughter. The entire room exploded. Gasps. Shouts. Chairs scraping against the floor. Mateo actually whispered, "Holy." My brain couldn't process what I had just heard. That's not possible, my mother snapped immediately. Her voice had climbed several octaves. You're lying. Daniel didn't even glance at her. His eyes stayed locked on my father. Luis, he said quietly, are you really going to pretend you don't recognize me? My father swallowed hard. His face had gone the color of chalk. I told you to stay away, he muttered. The words sent a ripple through the room. Wait. You told him? You know him? I asked. Neither of my parents answered. Instead, my mother grabbed the microphone again. This man is a liar, she announced loudly. A con artist who somehow found out about the test results and decided to insert himself into our family business. Daniel's assistant stepped forward. She looked calm. Professional. The manila folder in her arms was thick enough to stop a bullet. With respect, she said politely, that statement is incorrect. She handed the folder to Daniel. He opened it slowly. Then he looked back at my father. You were the one who asked for 3 months, Daniel said. The crowd shifted again. 3 months. That was when the DNA test happened. My father shook his head sharply. That agreement ended years ago. No, Daniel replied. It ended 3 months ago. My chest tightened. What agreement? Daniel turned toward me. The pain in his eyes was unmistakable now. 30 years ago, he said carefully, your parents and I reached an arrangement. My parents both spoke at the same time. Don't. Stop. But Daniel ignored them. Your biological mother, he continued, was a woman named Rebecca Whitaker. The name felt unfamiliar. But the way he said it made something twist inside my chest. She was my wife. My heart slammed against my ribs. You're saying, you're my father? Daniel nodded slowly. Yes. My mother scoffed loudly. Oh please. But Daniel's assistant stepped forward again. She removed several papers from the folder and handed them to the nearest table. These are certified financial records, she explained. Bank transfer confirmations. Relatives leaned forward, studying the documents. Starting in 1994, she continued, Daniel Whitaker began sending monthly financial support payments to Luis and Carmen Ramirez. My stomach dropped. Payments? Daniel's voice was calm. $1,500 a month. The room erupted again. Every month, his assistant said, for 29 years. She paused. The total amount transferred comes to $522,000. The exact number my father had just demanded from me. My father's face twisted. That was compensation. For what? I asked. My voice shook. But I forced myself to keep speaking. For raising someone else's child, my mother snapped. Daniel's calm expression cracked. For raising my daughter, he corrected quietly. My chest felt like it had been hollowed out. You paid them? Yes. For my entire life? Yes. A wave of nausea hit me. So when they said I owed them $500,000. Daniel's jaw tightened. They had already been paid. The room buzzed with angry whispers now. Several relatives were flipping through the financial records. Carmen, my aunt whispered from the second row, your signature is on these receipts. My mother's face went rigid. They're fake. But the assistant shook her head. Each document has been verified through both banks. She pulled out another sheet. Here are the original transfer confirmations. More murmurs. My father slammed his fist onto the table. This is irrelevant. But it wasn't. Because suddenly the entire room understood what was happening. They had just watched my parents demand money that had already been paid. For 30 years. Why? I asked. My voice barely came out. Why would you pay them? Daniel took a slow breath. Then he reached into the inside pocket of his jacket. When he pulled his hand out, he was holding something small. A photograph. He walked toward me slowly. No one tried to stop him. The entire room parted as he approached. He stopped beside my chair. Then he handed me the photo. The woman in the picture looked like she could have been my reflection. Same eyes. Same smile. Same dark hair. My hands began to shake. Who is she? Daniel's voice cracked. Your mother. My vision blurred. She died when you were 5. The words felt like they were echoing through a tunnel. Cancer, he added softly. I stared at the photograph. I had spent my entire life wondering where I came from. And suddenly I was staring at the face of the woman who gave me life. Tears slid down my cheeks before I even realized I was crying. Daniel pulled another item from his jacket. This time it was an envelope. Old. Yellowed. The edges worn soft with time. Before she passed, he said quietly, Rebecca wrote you a letter. He held it out carefully. She asked me to give it to you when you were old enough to understand the truth. My hands trembled as I took it. The room was completely silent now. Even Mateo had lowered his phone slightly. I opened the envelope slowly. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Beautiful handwriting filled the page. My dearest Elena. If you are reading this, it means I was not strong enough to stay with you. Please know that you were never unwanted. From the moment I knew you existed, you were the greatest joy of my life. Your father, Daniel, loves you more than anything in this world. He fought for you. But sometimes love is not enough to win against fear and pressure. Please do not grow up believing you were abandoned. You were protected. And you were always loved. Live your life with courage, my sweet girl. Be kind. Be strong. And remember that somewhere, somehow, I am always proud of you. All my love. Mom. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. For 30 years I had believed my biological parents didn't want me. That I had been discarded. But the truth was something entirely different. The letter slipped slightly in my hands as I pressed it against my chest. The ballroom remained silent. 72 witnesses watching something none of them had expected. Not a trial. Not a humiliation. A revelation. And suddenly I understood something terrifying. My parents hadn't planned this party to get money from me. They had planned it to destroy me before I could ever hear the truth. Before he could tell me who I really was. And the man they had spent my entire life pretending was dead, was standing right in front of me. I couldn't breathe. The letter trembled in my hands as I stared down at the elegant handwriting. For 30 years I had carried a quiet belief buried somewhere deep inside me. That I had been abandoned. That whoever my real parents were, they had chosen not to keep me. That belief had shaped everything. Every insecurity. Every moment I worked harder than everyone else just to prove I deserved to exist. And now I was holding proof that none of it had been true. You were protected. The words echoed in my mind. I slowly lifted my head. Daniel Whitaker was still standing in front of me. His eyes were red. But he wasn't looking at the crowd. He was looking only at me. Like I was the only person in the room who mattered. Across the table, my parents looked like cornered animals. My father's jaw was clenched so tight it looked painful. My mother's fingers gripped the edge of the table. Enough, she snapped suddenly. This circus is over. But the room didn't move. Nobody stood up. Nobody left. Because now everyone understood something important. The story had changed. This wasn't about a daughter refusing to repay a debt anymore. This was about a secret that had been buried for 3 decades. And the truth was clawing its way into the light. I wiped my face slowly. Then I stood. My legs felt unsteady, but I forced myself to remain upright. The entire ballroom watched. 72 people who had just witnessed my parents try to publicly dismantle my life. I looked at my father. You knew, I said quietly. It wasn't a question. His eyes flicked away. You knew my biological father was alive. No answer. You knew he was paying you. Still nothing. My voice grew steadier. And you let me believe I had been abandoned. My mother slammed her hand on the table. We raised you. The words cracked through the room like a whip. Do you have any idea how difficult that was? She continued. You were not our responsibility. Daniel's calm voice cut through the tension. She was 5 years old. My mother spun toward him. And she wasn't yours to raise. Daniel's expression darkened. That's not what the agreement said. The room stirred again. Agreement. My head turned toward him. What agreement? He hesitated. For the first time since he had entered the room, uncertainty crossed his face. But then he looked back at me. And I could see the decision in his eyes. You deserve the truth. My parents both shouted at the same time. No. But Daniel continued. When Rebecca became sick, he said gently, Her parents believed the stress of raising a child would make her condition worse. My chest tightened. They forced us into a legal arrangement. What kind of arrangement? I whispered. Daniel's jaw flexed. One that allowed Luis and Carmen to raise you until you turned 30. The number hung in the air. 30. My age. Why 30? Because Rebecca's parents believed that was the age when you would be emotionally strong enough to hear the truth. The room buzzed again. They didn't want you taken away, he continued. They wanted you to have stability. So they paid you to stay away? I asked. Daniel nodded slowly. I was allowed to see you only from a distance. My heart pounded. What does that mean? His voice softened. It means I attended your school plays sitting in the back row. My breath caught. It means I watched you graduate high school from the parking lot. My vision blurred again. It means I saw you become a nurse, without ever being allowed to tell you how proud I was. A heavy silence settled over the ballroom. Even the people who had been whispering earlier had stopped. Because suddenly this story had become something far deeper than gossip. It had become something painful. Something human. You're lying, my mother snapped again. But her voice sounded thinner now. Less confident. Daniel turned slowly toward my parents. I honored the agreement, he said quietly. For 30 years. His assistant pulled another document from the folder. And the agreement ended 3 months ago. The same time my parents suddenly decided to stage this entire spectacle. Realization crashed over me. You knew he was coming, I said. My father didn't answer. But his silence was enough. You knew he was going to tell me the truth. My mother shook her head violently. You don't understand. No, I said calmly. I understand perfectly. My voice echoed through the ballroom. You tried to destroy me before he could reach me. Several relatives shifted uncomfortably. My father grabbed the microphone again. Elena, he said sharply. You're letting this man manipulate you. But something inside me had changed. For the first time that night, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel scared. I felt angry. Not the explosive kind of anger that leads to shouting. The quiet kind. The kind that sharpens your thoughts. You demanded $500,000 tonight, I said slowly. And you already received $500,000. My father's lips tightened. That money was compensation. For what? For raising you. With his money. Silence. My mother opened her mouth to respond. But no words came out. Because there wasn't an answer that made them look better. Only one that made them look exactly like what they were. People who had spent 30 years taking money for a child they treated like a burden. I looked around the room. 72 people. Family members who had watched this entire scene unfold. You all came here tonight expecting to watch me apologize, I said. No one met my eyes. You expected to see me sign a contract and beg my parents for forgiveness. My gaze swept across the crowd. But not one of you asked a single question. My aunt in the front row looked down at her lap. Uncle Javier shifted in his chair. Not one of you wondered why parents would publicly demand repayment for raising their child. Still silence. I nodded slowly. That tells me everything I need to know. My father's voice rose sharply. Elena, that's enough. But I ignored him. Instead I turned toward Daniel. The man who had just rewritten the entire story of my life. His eyes softened again when I faced him. For a long moment neither of us spoke. Then I took a breath. I need time, I said quietly. The words felt strange. But honest. I can't just suddenly call you Dad. Daniel nodded immediately. I understand. His voice held no disappointment. Only patience. I've waited 30 years, he said gently. I can wait longer. Something inside my chest loosened slightly. Then I turned back toward the table. Toward the people who had raised me. Toward the people who had just tried to ruin me in front of 72 witnesses. My mother stepped forward suddenly. "You can't just walk away," she said. Her voice trembled now. "We're still your family." I looked at her. Really looked at her. And for the first time in my life, I saw her clearly. Not as my mother, but as a person. A person who had spent decades hiding the truth. "You're the people who took money to raise me," I said calmly. "You're the people who lied to me for 30 years. My father clenched his fists. "We gave you a home. With his money." Silence again. "And tonight," I continued, "you tried to destroy my future." My voice stayed steady. "You threatened my career. You took my car keys. You live-streamed my humiliation to thousands of strangers." Matteo slowly lowered his phone. The live-stream comments were still racing past on the screen. But even he looked uncomfortable now. I shook my head slowly. "That's not what family does." Then I stepped around the chair. Around the table. And started walking toward the exit. My mother's voice followed me. "Elena." But I didn't stop. The ballroom doors opened. Cold Chicago air rushed in as I stepped outside. And for the first time that night, I felt free. Behind me, the doors closed. And the explosion inside the ballroom began. The cold night air hit my face like a shock. For several seconds I just stood there on the stone steps outside the Lakeview Ballroom, trying to steady my breathing. Chicago's skyline stretched across the horizon, the lights reflecting across the dark water of Lake Michigan. Inside the building behind me, muffled shouting had already begun. The party, no, the trial, was falling apart. But I couldn't bring myself to turn around. Not yet. My hands were still trembling. I looked down at the letter from my mother. Rebecca Whitaker. My real mother. The paper was creased from where I had gripped it too tightly. "You were protected." The words echoed again in my head. 30 years of believing I had been unwanted had been undone in the span of 10 minutes. My entire identity had shifted. Footsteps sounded behind me. For a second I wondered if my parents had followed me outside. But when I turned around, it was Daniel. He had stepped through the doors quietly, leaving the chaos inside behind him. For a moment we just looked at each other. Two strangers connected by blood and 30 years of silence. "I'm sorry," he said softly. The words surprised me. "For what?" "For the way you had to learn the truth." I let out a slow breath. "I don't think there was ever going to be an easy way." He nodded. "That's true." The wind coming off the lake tugged lightly at his coat. Up close I could see the lines on his face more clearly. Not just age. Regret. "I never wanted this to happen in front of so many people," he said. "Then why did it?" He glanced back at the doors. "Because your parents knew I was coming." That confirmed the suspicion that had been growing in my mind. They were trying to get ahead of the story. Yes. I folded my arms tightly. So they staged a public humiliation instead. Daniel's expression hardened. I underestimated how far they were willing to go. Inside the building, a loud crash echoed. Someone shouting. Another voice yelling back. The fallout had begun. "What happens now?" I asked quietly. Daniel studied me carefully before answering. "That depends on what you want." The question caught me off guard. "What I want?" "Yes." He leaned against the railing beside the steps. "You're 30 years old. The agreement ended the moment you turned 30. So legally, you can choose to have a relationship with me." He paused. "Or not." The honesty in his voice surprised me. He wasn't pushing. He wasn't trying to force anything. "You're not going to try to convince me?" I asked. A faint smile appeared. I spent 30 years waiting for the chance to meet you. He looked out toward the dark lake. I'm not going to ruin that by rushing you. I studied him quietly. This man had watched my life from a distance. Graduations. School plays. Moments he should have been part of. And yet he had kept his word to the agreement. Even when my parents clearly hadn't. How did you find out they were planning this? I asked. My lawyers contacted them 3 months ago when the agreement ended. That matched Mateo's accidental confession earlier. They responded by requesting a meeting, Daniel continued. But when we tried to schedule one with you, they refused. My stomach twisted. They didn't want you speaking to me. No. The answer was simple. Direct. And when we informed them that the agreement legally required them to disclose the truth to you. He exhaled slowly. They stopped responding. I let out a bitter laugh. So their solution was to accuse me of being a financial burden. Essentially. The ballroom doors burst open suddenly. Mateo stumbled outside. His hair was messy and his face pale. Elena, he said breathlessly. There you are. Behind him the noise from inside had grown louder. Is everything okay? I asked dryly. Mateo gave a nervous laugh. Not exactly. He shoved his phone into his pocket. Mom and Dad are kind of losing it. I raised an eyebrow. What happened? Mateo rubbed the back of his neck. Well, first Dad started yelling at Mom about the money. Apparently he didn't know about some of the payments. My eyes widened slightly. He didn't know? Mateo shook his head. Not all of them. Interesting. So now they're fighting about that. He pointed behind him. And Aunt Lucia is screaming at Dad for humiliating you in public. Another shout echoed from inside, followed by a chair scraping loudly across the floor. Uncle Javier tried to calm everyone down, Mateo added. That didn't work. Daniel remained silent beside me, watching the chaos unfold with quiet restraint. Mateo finally noticed him. Oh. He cleared his throat awkwardly. So, you're, Yes, Daniel said gently. Mateo nodded slowly. Well. He looked at me again. This is a lot. That's one way to put it. Mateo shifted his weight. For what it's worth. He hesitated. I didn't know about the money either. I studied my brother's face. For the first time since this started, he looked genuinely uncomfortable. You were still live streaming, I pointed out. His ears turned red. Yeah. I stopped it after everything exploded inside. How many people saw it? Mateo winced. About 80,000. I closed my eyes. Of course. My entire life had just become internet entertainment. Actually, Mateo added cautiously. It's probably more by now. I sighed. Wonderful. Daniel spoke quietly beside me. Sometimes the truth spreads faster than lies. Mateo looked relieved to change the subject. Anyway. Dad is asking where you went. I laughed softly. I'm sure he is. And Mom keeps saying you can't leave. Watch me. Mateo shoved his hands into his pockets. They're probably going to try calling you. I won't answer. He nodded slowly. That's fair. We stood there in silence for a moment. The shouting inside had started again. Louder this time. Then Mateo suddenly grimaced. Oh, wow. What? I asked. He pulled his phone back out. Remember the live stream? Yes. It's trending. My stomach dropped. Trending where? Everywhere. He turned the screen toward me. The video thumbnail showed my father holding the DNA results while I sat in the chair. The caption read, Parents publicly disown daughter, then her real father walks in. The view count was climbing rapidly. Hundreds of thousands. And rising. Mateo looked at me carefully. Yeah. He exhaled slowly. This is going to get big. Inside the ballroom another loud crash echoed. Then someone screamed. Daniel straightened beside me. I think that's our cue to leave. He gestured toward the parking lot. Before the police arrive. I blinked. You think someone called the police? Mateo nodded. Uncle Javier did. I let out a long breath. Perfect. Daniel opened the passenger door of a sleek black car parked near the curb. I can give you a ride home, he offered. I hesitated. Then nodded. Okay. As I climbed into the car, I looked back at the glowing windows of the ballroom. 30 years of secrets had just exploded inside that building. And somehow, it felt like my real life was only just beginning. The car ride home was quiet. Daniel didn't try to fill the silence with conversation. He didn't ask questions. He didn't push me to talk about what had just happened. And strangely, that made everything easier. Chicago's city lights passed slowly outside the window as we drove through the streets. My mind replayed the events of the night again and again. The DNA results. The contract. The money. The letter from my mother. And the moment Daniel Whitaker walked into that room. 30 years of lies had collapsed in a single hour. You can ask anything you want, Daniel said gently after several minutes of silence. I glanced over at him. What do you mean? About your mother. About me. About the agreement. He kept his eyes on the road. I won't hide anything from you. I thought about that. For most of my life, information had always been controlled around me. My parents decided what I knew. What I didn't know. What questions were allowed. But tonight had shattered that pattern. I have a lot of questions, I admitted. Daniel gave a small smile. I assumed you would. The car stopped at a red light. I stared out the windshield for a moment before speaking. Did my mom really want to keep me? Daniel didn't hesitate. More than anything. Something inside my chest loosened again. But her parents were extremely powerful people, he continued. They believed our relationship was a mistake. And when she got sick. He paused. They tightened their control. I swallowed. So they forced you to give me up? Yes. And my parents just agreed to raise me? Daniel nodded slowly. They were acquaintances of Rebecca's family. My stomach twisted. So they volunteered? They were offered financial support. The way he said it made it sound like a transaction. Which, apparently, it had been. And the agreement was that you had to stay away until I turned 30? Yes. That seems like a very specific age. Daniel exhaled slowly. It was chosen because Rebecca's parents believed you would be old enough to handle the truth by then. I stared down at the letter in my lap again. 30 years. 30 years of waiting. Did you ever try to break the agreement? I asked quietly. Daniel was silent for a moment. Then he nodded once. Yes. My eyes lifted quickly. What happened? I hired lawyers when you were about 12. And? They warned me that Rebecca's family would take legal action. What kind of action? They had enough influence to make sure I never saw you again. My chest tightened. So you stopped trying. I kept watching from a distance instead. The light turned green and the car moved forward again. I attended every public event I could. My throat felt tight again. I just wasn't allowed to speak to you. I leaned my head back against the seat. That must have been strange. Daniel gave a quiet laugh. That's one word for it. The car pulled into the parking lot of my apartment building. For a moment neither of us moved. The night felt heavier now that the chaos of the ballroom was behind us. What happens next? I asked quietly. Daniel turned off the engine. That depends entirely on you. He looked at me directly. I don't expect anything from you tonight. Or tomorrow. Or even this year. His voice was calm. I just want the opportunity to know you. Something about the way he said that felt genuine. Not demanding. Not entitled. Just hopeful. I nodded slowly. I think I'd like that. A small smile crossed his face. That's enough for me. I opened the car door and stepped out into the cool night air. But before I closed it, Daniel spoke again. Elena. I looked back at him. Yes. You handled yourself incredibly well tonight. I blinked. Most people would have panicked in that situation. He paused. You stayed calm. You asked the right questions. And you walked away with dignity. I shrugged slightly. Years in the ER teaches you how to stay calm when everything is falling apart. Daniel smiled. I can see that. I closed the car door and watched as he drove away down the street. Then I walked up the steps to my apartment. Inside, everything was quiet. Peaceful. I set my purse on the kitchen counter and sank onto the couch. For a long time I just sat there staring at the letter. Eventually my phone buzzed. Then buzzed again. And again. I glanced down at the screen. Notifications flooded in. Text messages. Missed calls. Social media alerts. The live stream video Matteo had posted was everywhere now. Millions of views. News accounts had already started reposting it. Chicago family scandal goes viral. Parents demand daughter repay cost of raising her. Biological father appears with evidence. The story had exploded across the internet. My phone rang again. Mom. I let it go to voicemail. 2 seconds later it rang again. Dad. I silenced the call. Then a message appeared from Matteo. Matteo. Things are getting bad here. I stared at the message. Then typed back. Me. How bad? The reply came almost immediately. Matteo. Police showed up. I sat up straighter. Me. Why? Matteo. Someone reported a disturbance. Another message followed. Matteo. Also, the live stream is at 2.3 million views. I exhaled slowly. Of course it was. The video had everything the internet loved. Family drama. Public betrayal. A shocking twist. And 72 witnesses. Another message popped up. Matteo. Mom keeps saying you need to come back. I typed back. Me. No. 3 dots appeared as he started typing again. Then stopped. Then started again. Finally the message came through. Matteo. Honestly. I think leaving was the right move. That surprised me. Before I could respond, another notification appeared. An email. From St. Michael's Hospital. My stomach dropped. Dad. He must have contacted them already. I hesitated for a moment. Then opened it. The email was from Dr. Rebecca Chen, the hospital director. The subject line read, regarding your promotion interview. My heart pounded as I opened the message. I had been expecting the worst. Instead, the first sentence made me freeze. Elena, I watched the video your father sent. My pulse raced. Then I read the next line. And I think we need to talk tomorrow. I stared at the screen. My entire career might be hanging on whatever happened next. And for the first time since the party began, I realized the real consequences of that night were only just beginning. The next morning I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, the night replayed itself. The ballroom. The DNA results. My parents demanding $500,000 in front of 72 relatives. Daniel walking through the crowd. The letter from my mother. And the moment everything changed. At 7:30 a.m., I walked into St. Michael's Hospital feeling like every pair of eyes in the building was watching me. Which, in a way, they probably were. The video from the party had spread everywhere overnight. News sites. TikTok. Twitter. Millions of views. My phone had stopped buzzing only because I finally turned it off. As I walked through the hospital corridor, a few nurses looked up from the front desk. None of them said anything. But they definitely knew. I reached the administrative floor and stopped outside Dr. Chen's office. For a moment, I just stood there. My father had threatened to destroy my career. And according to Mateo, he had already sent the video to the hospital. I took a deep breath and knocked. "Come in," Dr. Chen's voice called. I pushed the door open. She was sitting behind her desk reviewing something on her tablet. When she looked up, her expression was calm. "Good morning, Elena." "Good morning. Please sit." I sat across from her, trying to keep my hands steady. Dr. Chen folded her hands on the desk. "I received an email from Luis Ramirez last night." There it was. The moment I had been dreading. He demanded that we reconsider your candidacy for the ER supervisor position. My stomach tightened. I figured. He attached a video. I nodded. "I'm aware." Dr. Chen leaned back in her chair. I watched the entire thing. For a moment she didn't say anything else. The silence stretched. Finally she spoke again. "Elena, I've worked in hospital administration for 23 years. She tapped the tablet lightly. And in that time I've seen people completely fall apart under pressure. I braced myself. But what I saw in that video was something very different. I blinked. You stood in front of 72 people who were actively trying to humiliate you." She paused. "And you remained calm. You asked intelligent questions. You identified logical flaws in the DNA argument. And when the situation became toxic," she smiled slightly, "you walked away." I felt the tension in my chest loosen slightly. Dr. Chen turned the tablet toward me. The video was paused on the moment I stood up from the chair in the ballroom. "You handled yourself like a leader," she said. My throat tightened. That's exactly the kind of composure we look for in a supervisor. My brain struggled to process what she was saying. Then she added one more sentence. "The ER supervisor position is yours if you still want it." For a second I couldn't speak. "You mean I still have the promotion?" Dr. Chen nodded. "You earned it." A rush of relief washed through me. "But there's something else you should know," she added. I waited. "I also received a phone call last night. From Daniel Whitaker." My head lifted quickly. "What did he say?" "He made it very clear that he would not interfere in any professional decisions involving you." Dr. Chen smiled slightly. His exact words were, "Elena deserves to succeed on her own merit." That sounded exactly like him. I felt something warm settle in my chest. Dr. Chen stood and extended her hand. "Congratulations, Elena." I stood and shook it. "Thank you." As I walked out of the office, I felt lighter than I had in years. For the first time since the party, it felt like my life was actually moving forward. Not collapsing. 2 weeks later, I moved into a new apartment. A small one-bedroom place on the north side of the city. Nothing fancy. But it was mine. Every piece of furniture inside it had been paid for with my own money. My own work. My own effort. Daniel offered to help pay for the move. I told him no. Not because I didn't appreciate the offer, but because I needed to build something for myself. He understood. Instead, he showed up on moving day with a toolbox and spent 4 hours helping me assemble a bookshelf. It ended up slightly crooked. We both laughed about it. On my desk, I placed the framed photograph of my mother, Rebecca Whitaker. Every morning when I leave for work, I glance at that photo. And for the first time in my life, I know exactly where I came from. As for my parents, I haven't spoken to them since the night of the party. They called dozens of times at first. Then the messages slowly stopped. From what Matteo told me, things at home completely fell apart. The video damaged their reputation more than anything else. My father's business partners began distancing themselves. My mother's social circle quietly disappeared. 72 witnesses had seen what happened that night. And millions more saw the video online. Secrets don't survive that kind of exposure. Matteo eventually moved out of their house. He actually apologized to me a few days later. Sincerely. He said he never expected the live stream to reveal the truth the way it did. Ironically, the thing they used to try to destroy me ended up exposing them instead. Daniel and I meet once a week now. Usually at a small coffee shop near the lake. Sometimes we talk for hours. Sometimes we just sit quietly. I'm not ready to call him Dad yet. But we're getting there. And honestly, that's enough for now. Looking back, I've spent a lot of time thinking about that night. Why my parents did what they did. Why they tried so hard to destroy me before the truth came out. A therapist once explained something to me that made a lot of sense. People who build their lives on control will do anything to keep that control. When the truth threatens it, they panic. My parents didn't attack me because I had done something wrong. They attacked because the truth was about to expose them. And they were afraid. But here's the thing I learned from all of this. Your worth isn't determined by how people treat you. Sometimes the people who are supposed to love you the most are the ones who fail you. And when that happens, walking away isn't weakness. It's survival. I'm 30 years old now. I have a career I worked hard for. A home that belongs to me. A father who's finally part of my life. And a future that I'm building one decision at a time. My parents tried to humiliate me that night. Instead, they gave me the freedom to walk away. And honestly, that might be the greatest gift they ever gave me. Before we finish, if this story meant something to you, make sure you subscribe to Women Reddit Stories for more powerful real lifestyle stories like this. And I'd really love to hear your thoughts. Do you think I should ever forgive my parents? Comment A for yes, B for no, or C for maybe someday. Wherever you're watching from tonight, take care of yourself. And remember this. You deserve people in your life who choose you.